What does FNAF Help Wanted 2 hide from you in these staff-only minigames? In the staff-only minigames, you'll be putting your training to good use in a multitude of tasks. From digging an entire birthday cake, from Glamrock Freddy's chest cavity, or performing risky medical procedures on your pal Helpy. You'll definitely be working for that sweet paycheck today. Within these minigames, there's a lot going on behind the scenes that we aren't able to see. So today, we'll be taking a look out of bounds and off camera at some things the developers don't want you to see. Like for instance, the actual location of the staff bots in Fizzy Faz, or even a hidden test map you'd never know existed. There's lots to see, and of course break too, so I hope you enjoy today's behind the scenes look at Help Wanted 2. Now as always, I like to do a quick recap of the game's events, so that we're all caught up on what we'll be covering. However, because we'll be looking at multiple minigames today, I'll recap each one as we get to it. So the first of these staff-only minigames is Cold Storage. In this surprisingly quick game, you'll thaw out Freddy's arms as their frozen salad. After this, you'll open his arms by matching the tool shapes to their slots, replacing the battery, and managing its temperature to prevent it from overheating. From here, you open up Freddy's face by taking his eyes out, which lets you access the cake hatch in his body. If you can keep this set of coils from overheating, you'll retrieve the cake and replace it with another one, avoiding a total meltdown and finishing the game. Now, starting this minigame over, the first thing I wanted to do was have a look around the area for a better view of the map. As the name insists, we're actually in a cold storage room lined with shelving and boxes. There are two doors in this room that we, for obvious reasons, can't ever investigate more closely. The one behind us immediately drops off into the void below, but the one behind Freddy doesn't. Behind this door, the floor actually extends a short distance past the rest of the room. And the same goes for these orange barriers attached to it. Back inside the map, we can begin thawing out our big friend here, and there's something I noticed that I want to look at more closely. From what I can tell, the ice on Freddy's arms doesn't ever actually change when it's being melted, but instead a neat trick is being used to simulate this taking place. Instead of fully animating a melting sequence, it appears that the ice chunks are actually just shrinking in size at a uniform scale, and as this occurs, they become more transparent until they disappear completely. Even in bullet time, and zoomed in pretty close, this sequence is still pretty convincing. During this process, the majority of the ice block clips through Freddy's arm, only making it more convincing that it's really melting away. Now if we take a look outside the map, we'll find Glamrock Freddy's jumpscare model hanging out in this two-faced sphere. But there's something clearly missing here. For some odd reason, Freddy's eyes are currently pulled out of their sockets and are instead floating behind his back. He's totally alone in this room besides the player, so I'm glad there's somebody watching his back, even if it is himself. Sorry, he set me up for that one. I just couldn't help myself. That's not the only thing that's weird about this jumpscare model either. When watching in bullet time, something I noticed is that the flap on his left arm had opened up to reveal the battery slot inside. There is no battery in it, and his eyes are still missing to top it all off. This is actually inconsistent with the level up above, since we never even melted the ice from Freddy's arms, and his eyes are clearly still inside of his face. Who knows, maybe we kept him waiting too long, and he started the job on his own. With that said, let's move onward to First Aid Pig Patch. Starting on the first level, you'll find that Helpy here is pretty accident prone, and so you're tasked with the exciting job of performing surgical procedures depending on the symptoms he's facing. This can be as simple as cleaning a scraped knee and slapping a bandage on it, or even more complex surgeries like hitting him with a hammer. This can result in Helpy vocalizing his discomfort, which can attract unwanted visitors like our friend Pigpatch here. You'll have to silence Helpy when this happens by using a special mask. Otherwise, you'll ultimately be jump scared. After all your patients have been patched up, the night will be completed, and you can move on to the next. So heading back to the start of this night, we can pull the camera back and take a look at this location. There are actually two different sections to this level, despite gameplay only ever taking place inside the surgery room. From our usual perspective, we can see what looks like a hallway or another room of some kind beyond the curtains. This hypothetical room was a total lie though, and it's only a back wall with a false ceiling above it. The floor is covered in a black and white checkered pattern, and it's a bit strange because this floor extends beneath our usual gameplay area too. We just can't see it due to a second floor being placed over top of it. Inside the level, there are a handful of objects and assets scattered around us, including these freaky kid drawings. They're creepy from afar, and not much better up close either. Scrap Baby looks especially nightmare-inducing, and the drawings of Helpy in various tragic situations doesn't really help the fact. It's certainly not something I'd want to see during a routine checkup, but hey, at least you get a candy at the end. Speaking of Helpy though, we can find him hanging out behind the scenes before the minigame begins. As I matter of fact, we'll find all 3 of him. All 3 versions of the animatronic are currently placed out of bounds next to the vents, and is actually looking in good shape. It's kind of interesting knowing this though, because we know now the Helpy isn't even injured until he enters our care. The poor guy doesn't realize it, but he'd be perfectly healthy if he just stayed outside instead. Next to this set of characters, there's some stuff I found that I didn't immediately recognize. A couple of small objects that are currently floating out of bounds. The game is paused at the moment, but if we resume time, they will endlessly fall and reset to their starting positions. I don't recognize the black object here, but the rusty looking item turned out to be one of Helpy's lungs. A piece that I don't believe we'll interact with until much later in this game's hard mode level. It's just floating out here in an endless time loop. What even? When the game begins, one of these Helpies will be properly banged up and warped onto the operating table in front of the player. After the surgery is finished though, Helpy won't be moved back out of bounds as I first thought, but instead he's removed from the level entirely. Good for him too. This is probably the worst hospital I've ever seen. Now there's more to this minigame than honing our inner Dr. Traeger, and I'm of course referring to our encounters with Pigpatch. This guy's currently hanging out beneath our feet, T-posing in the void space outside the map. Pigpatch will only attack when drawn to our location by Helpy's shrieks, and he climbs through these vents beside us to do so. The vents of course don't lead anywhere, they just cut off outside the player's view, but there's something weird about this one. The vent is supposed to curve off to the side, but instead there's a solid wall here, which should hypothetically prevent anything from getting through. Well, don't go counting your bacon before it fries, because Pigpatch obviously just doesn't care. He'll turn around this corner and start clipping through it anyway. We can even see this from our usual perspective too, which almost makes it scarier. Pigpatch does as he pleases, and I am not going to be the one to question him. Before moving on from this level, we can take a quick look at his jump scare in bullet time, where he goes ham on the player. Pun completely intended. In the following minigame, First Aid Lefty, we'll play essentially the same minigame, but instead of Pigpatch, we'll be dealing with Lefty instead. The difficulty is also raised here, since the vents are now open from the start, so there's a higher chance of encountering Lefty. Also, the TV can switch on automatically, which can attract him too, so you'll have to quickly grab the remote and turn it off to avoid him. So one of the first things I noticed while taking a look at this area is the absence of Helpy's robotic lung out of bounds. Of course, the character himself is still present in the same place as the previous level, but there are no animatronic pieces falling in an endless time loop. Of course, because we have a new enemy to face in this stage, Lefty has replaced Pigpatch beneath the level. He's T-posing directly beneath our feet and waiting for his favorite commercials to come on TV. Just the same as before, Lefty will enter the vents and begin his attack on the player whenever the sound is triggered inside. And in case you are curious, this is what his jump scare looks like in super slow-mo. Something else you may have noticed is that the vents now obey the laws of physics. Both vents are now properly modeled inside, and there are no walls blocking our view of their interior. That also means that Lefty doesn't have to Mario 64 his way through the wall in order to enter the room, for better or worse. There are a couple of other changes to the map we can note as well, primarily the eroded appearance of the walls and the complete lack of vent covers during this night. Something I had not noticed during my first playthrough was this creepy dark puddle at the player's feet. The shimmer almost makes it look like oil, and I really hope that's all this is. It has a rippling appearance to it as well, almost like something just dropped through it. For the most part, this night is the same as the first, but new injuries can afflict poor Helpy. In this case, he needs a dose of rabid animal cure, but the way they pulled off the foaming effect is pretty neat. Up close, you can see that each section is a small piece of foam that extends and contracts at different intervals. The effect it creates is pretty convincing, but since we're currently watching in slow motion, it almost looks like teeth appearing and disappearing, which is pretty terrifying. There is not much else that changed between these two nights, so let's take a quick peek at the hard mode level as well. First Aid Scrap Baby. Being a hard mode level, this is of course the most difficult of the First Aid minigames. Scrap Baby is faster than the previous animatronics, and the advertisements that appear on our television are much more frequent, so you really have to stay on your toes now. There are also more ailments that can afflict Helpy, like replacing a seriously broken eye or giving him a new lung like we saw out of bounds earlier. So with the lights on, you can more clearly see how much more damage has been done to the office. There are several more of these markings on the wall now, and although it's hard to tell exactly what they are, they make the room all the creepier. The lighting will become more grim during this night as well, but you can't really see that at the moment, so you'll just have to take my word for it. Beneath the player, there is a genuine nightmare waiting for us, and that is Scrap Baby T-posing in all her rusty glory. Up close, she is seriously terrifying, and it's no easier to look at when she's crawling through the vents and into our workplace. Based on her appearance alone, she's the definition of nightmare fuel, and with a giant pair of chainsaw scissors on her right arm, it somehow elevates that factor even more. I don't think a puny hammer will be enough to defend myself either, so I'm thinking that 2-week notice might be a bit overdue. Something I realized during this minigame is that the vents aren't the only place enemies can enter the room from, and Scrap Baby appeared behind the curtain to attack us instead. Apparently, this can also take place in the previous nights as well, but for some reason, it only occurred during my face-off with Scrap Baby. Anyway, she starts this animation in the false room behind the curtains, where she's out of our sight, grabbing the curtain and peering inside at you for a bit before proceeding. She snips her pinchy thing at us a couple of times before entering the room and triggering a jump scare, which we can now check out in slow motion. This sequence is surprisingly brutal. After grabbing the player with a rusty hand, she'll reel back, swinging her weapon forward and giving you the worst haircut you've probably ever gotten. That's it for the first aid minigames, so let's keep things rolling and dive into Fizzy Faz. Here you'll be tasked with the preparation of Fazbear Entertainment's sugary beverages. Using the provided cup, Fizzy Faz sodas have to be made using the correct ingredients from the dispensers on your left. Each recipe has a time limit to complete, and failing this means trashing your current concoction and starting over on the next. On night 2, the minigame becomes a bit harder, now requiring more ingredients per drink and the introduction of the security cameras. Apparently staff bots are entitled to breaks too, so you'll have to check their workstations frequently and give them temporary downtime when they become their Nightmarian versions. If you wait too long, they'll arrive at your office, forcing you to shut the whole operation down before they dare ask for a raise. Restarting this minigame, we'll turn the lights on and begin our exploration of this huge factory area. Our office is pretty small in comparison to the rest of the level, and outside this room, we'll find catwalks that lead through various tanks and workstations. When we look at our cameras, this is supposedly the area we're viewing, but there aren't any staff bots hanging out around here. I'll explain why in just a second, but first, there's a room in the back of this warehouse that I found pretty interesting. We can never get remotely close to this part of the level, but despite this, there's still a large office room here that's completely empty inside. You can actually access this area in Security Breach, and this room is typically full of office furniture and supplies. It's empty now because there is no way for us to access it, and furnishing it would have been practically pointless. So as I said a moment ago, the area outside of our office is just for show, and nothing really takes place inside of it. Behind the scenes, there are 6 rooms lined up in 2 rows, and each of them contains a set of tanks and a working staff bot. The minigame hasn't started yet, so each bot is currently in sleep mode, waiting for the shift to begin so they can get cracking on those tasty sodas. There is an outlier here though, that being this room is full of trash. We won't be interacting with this room on the first couple of nights, so we'll come back to it a little later on. Occasionally during our work hours, a hard-headed staff bot will glide past our office holding a tablet and glancing our way. If we take a look beneath the gameplay area, we can find both of these objects placed out of bounds, and they remain here until the bot crosses through our line of sight. There's something a bit odd here as well. Even further below these assets, we can find a small flat square clipping through the lowest point of the map's floor. It's angled slightly and covered in a default texture. While playing through the minigame, it didn't seem to move at any point either, so I'm assuming it's a scrapped asset that was simply forgotten about. Back inside the level, the staff bot will instantly appear to the left of our player's window and cross through the pathway. When this occurs, the hat and tablet are moved into their possession, but when leaving the player's sight, these objects return to their place out of bounds. I said this happens out of sight, but that's actually not the case. You can see this bot disappearing after passing the door on our right, and you don't even need the free range of motion VR provides to see this. Back inside the office, it's time to start mixing some sodas. To do this, we'll need to employ the use of this fancy cup on our workstation, and after filling it with each ingredient, it'll be sent using this pneumatic tube. This machine works a lot faster than you'd think too, and taking a look inside, you'll see that the ingredients just vanish. The cup never even moves an inch, and the door just opens back up after a moment. None of this would have mattered anyway, since the tube just pokes through the ceiling and stops, and it's solid on the end, so our ingredients couldn't go anywhere regardless. Unless this is some kind of Bluetooth soda dispenser, I'm starting to doubt the work efficiency of this warehouse. Now in night 2, there are a couple of things that can take place that didn't before. For starters, if the bots go long enough without being given a mandatory break, they'll just sort of stare up at the camera after turning into their Nightmarian form. Moving the camera into the small warehouse maps out of bounds, we can see this for ourselves, as they just stand completely still and glare at the camera. Of course, there isn't a physical camera in the map, so they're really just staring at the corner of the ceiling. When we put them to sleep, they'll instantly instantly shift back to their regular form and stare at the floor. If you wait too long, a staff bot will appear on the catwalk in front of your office and stare into the room at you. They're clearly not happy about their work schedule, and so they'll slam their hands on the window before just storming into your office to confront you. When this happens, a jump scare is triggered, which you can see here in super slow motion. While this is taking place, we can look inside the map to find that the bot just kept strolling past us. They eventually reached the printers behind us before finally unloading, but it's still funny to see that they never stop moving. Even funnier, this whole sequence restarts while the player is waiting in the static screen after dying. The bot tries to access the office a second time, as if jump scaring you once wasn't enough. So the majority of Fizzy Faz's levels are actually the hard mode variants. There are only 2 regular levels and 3 hard mode ones. On night 3, the game becomes slightly harder, with more ingredients being needed and a button becoming available to speed up your stat bots. Be careful though, because this leads to more frequent breaks for these lazy bums. On nights 4 and 5 though, Chica becomes active and will begin looking for something to snack on. So you have to lure her back to the garbage area by purposely trashing orders in order to keep things running smoothly. So if we move the camera away from the office and into the disposal area of night 4 and 5, we can now find Chica hanging out on this pile of garbage pizza. As soon as we dump any number of ingredients, Chica will instantly wake up and begin moving. It's very strange seeing her directly though, because she practically snaps between her poses with very little animation in between. If we're not careful though, she'll leave the room and interrupt our poor staff bots who are just trying to make a living. When this occurs, she'll warp into one of these warehouse sections and replace the bot working inside. But they don't disappear completely. The bot Chica replaces is actually moved outside of her office, floating to our left where we can't see them. They'll remain here until Chica either moves on to another location, or we send her back to the trash room by dumping ingredients. When this happens, you can see here that the bot instantly appears in the usual spot again, and Chica moves back to the trash room. On night 5, the bot who strolls by our front window is replaced by the Nightmarian version instead. Typically, this bot gives you an order to make, and missing the timer will count as one of your strikes before failing the minigame. The Nightmarian version skips this though, and it goes straight for the jump scare if we fail to make the executive order on time. If we do not keep Chica in check, she'll eventually end up at our office, where she appears inside the catwalk and flings herself onto our window. After staring at you for an uncomfortably long time, she'll make her way into the room, similar to the staff bots. Just like the bots, she'll also pass by the player completely, but she still triggers a jump scare regardless. Now let's head into the final game of staff only, Endo Warehouse. In this level, all you have to do is play a simple memory game in order to teach this Endo some basic behaviors. Each time you finish a set of cards, a harder puzzle will appear, making it harder to finish the puzzle without making mistakes. During this test, multiple Endos will appear in the room and try to reach you, only stopping when you look at them or finishing the round. After each puzzle is completed, you will successfully complete the minigame. So with the lights flicked on, I decided to check out the map now that we can see it more clearly. This was a mistake. The room is bright and colorful, with cheerful murals painted on the walls and ceiling. What's terrifying is the hooks and chains hanging from the ceiling. Some of these look like machine hooks meant for moving equipment around warehouses, and the others are straight up meat hooks with stat-bot heads hanging on them. In front of the player is a small playhouse with a TV on top, and laying against it is this poor stat-bot who is taking a nap? Yeah, we'll go with that. He is completely and entirely destroyed, with giant cracks and scratches in his body and head. The screen on top of this house has a constant loop of Moondrop playing on it though, which is pretty neat. Now, as for the Endos who approach the player throughout the night, you'll see that they just appear in the back corners of the level, where it will be hard for the player to see them. I didn't see them out of bounds before appearing in the level either, so I'm assuming they're being spawned in as they're needed instead. These characters slowly creep up to you while you're attempting the puzzle, but I wanted to see if they're really approaching the player or if their pathing is predetermined. To test this theory, I warped the player away from their usual position and into the back corner of the room. The Endos still kept on their usual warpath though, and they'll keep going until they reach the player's workspace and a jump scare occurs. The creepiest thing about this is that the Endos go full exorcist mode. They're programmed to always look at the player, and they won't stop even if that means rotating their head a full 180 degrees. I wasn't satisfied yet though, and so I wanted to see if I could stop them by setting up a few pitfall traps in the room. Apparently gravity is just a suggestion, and the Endos walked across the gaping holes in the floor without even thinking twice about it. Things just kept getting scarier though. As soon as a jump scare is triggered, the bots will look straight down at the floor, and this is because the player camera was moving inside the double-faced sphere out of bounds. And of course, we can watch the jump scare take place in bullet time. There's not much to this minigame, so I wanted to talk about something I found while exploring the game's files. This is an unimplemented test map for Bonnie Bowl, simply called Bowling Test. On top of this platform, there's a small lane and ball return, but I'm not sure about those pins. Instead of bowling pins, we have a set of rectangles standing at the end of the lane. We can't knock any of the pins down, unfortunately, and this is because we're unable to throw the ball, although we can still pick it up and drop it. Doing this results in the numbers up above having a corresponding 0 added beneath them, and so we can assume that the game has a semi-functional frame system at this time. We're currently viewing this in flat mode, so there's a chance that this may work properly in VR, but that's only a hunch. I'm sure by now you've noticed that Monty is just asserting his dominance on top of this area too. He is in a T-pose, just kind of sliding on a set path, crossing in and out of the bowling lane as he does. I assume this was done to test collisions between the bowling ball and what would eventually be the game's various obstacles, but again, I can only theorize since I wasn't in the room when this test area was built. But with that, that's everything I found hidden off camera and out of bounds in Help Wanted 2's staff-only minigames. I hope you enjoyed today's look behind the scenes, subscribe if you did, and I'll see you all very soon. Cheers!